Welcome to Alistair Davies Golf. Today I want to talk to you about the difference between wrist cock and wrist hinge. A lot of guys out there talk about wrist hinge and confuse it with wrist cock. So I want to try and give you some simple guides to know the difference between the two things. And it's not really that important, to be honest, but just when you're talking to other coaches, sometimes via email or online lessons, it's quite good to understand the same language. So then when you're talking in an area, people know you're talking about the same thing. So quite simply, when we open a door, we open it on a hinge, and the hinge would work this way. So when we're talking about wrist hinge, we're talking about the hinging action of the wrist this way, rather than the cocking or setting action, which would be this. If we think about a gun, and if we went to cock a gun, it would cock upwards, which is what the wrists do this way. Ideally in the golf swing, we look to hinge and cock the wrists, which is why it can be quite confusing. So when the club works away, there'll be a slight bit of hinging, and there'll be a bit of cocking, and the wrist cock can happen, to be honest, anywhere probably from round about your inner thigh to the top of the swing. And it all depends on the coach's preference or player preference, what model they want to work towards, where they'd want to see the wrist cock. My personal preference would probably be to cock them in the earlier part of the swing, and then there's less messing around in transition. So the simpler we can make things, and the more we can have things that are sort of preset or preloaded early on, and then maintained, for me that's simpler and an easier way to look at maintaining that kind of lag and wrist cock on the way down. But there's nothing wrong if someone is setting the wrist later and then maintaining it on the way down and it working effectively. So as long as something's working effectively, there's nothing wrong with any particular model you do. But just to clarify again, wrist hinge, wrist cock, or wrist set. So just because there's a lot of confusion out there about which is which, and a lot of people talk about wrist hinge as in wrist cock. So I just wanted to try and get that point out there.